All right, hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to this five-part series that will be talking through different skills you'll want for the P&T competition. My name is Kristen Patty, and along with my colleague Amy Lugo, we're going to be talking through five different key skills that all students will need to have mastered as they enter the Pharmacy and Therapeutics AMCP P&T competition. I'll be presenting two of the modules, and my colleague Amy will present the three after that. The purpose of these modules is to help students improve and recognize the core skills that they will need to compete in the national P&T competition. We want you both to develop and learn these skills as a part of the competition, but also be able to use this information to improve the quality of your drug monographs and your PowerPoint slides to hopefully help you get a little edge in the competition itself. This webinar series is broken up into five different modules. So the first will focus on methodology and references. Next, we'll talk about grading the evidence and the evidence pyramid. We'll talk about choosing your comparators wisely, and then we'll talk about comparative effectiveness, as well as indirect evidence as it relates to how you will compile that information in your monograph and PowerPoint presentation. This first section will start off with methodology and references. And so when we think about your methodology and your references that you're using in your lit search for the P&T competition literature review, you'll need to use this information throughout. So you'll need to use this information in both your drug monograph and your PowerPoint. You'll be using this to gather all the evidence that you're going to use in your write-ups, all the evidence that you'll use to make an informed recommendation for the drug for that year's competition. Specifically within the monograph, this will be important when you do your evidence gap analysis, when you're writing up the background section of your disease state and drug, when you do your summary and analysis of pivotal trials, economic studies, and systematic reviews and meta-analyses. So starting off with the search methodology, when students start off in the P&T competition, we want them to have an intentional literature search that's conducted. So in order to do this in an intentional manner, we recommend five key steps. First, students should start out by defining the research question. We'll talk more about this in detail, but we don't want you to just start Googling or start typing your drug into your PubMed search filters. We want you to sit down and intentionally outline what are you looking for and what information do you need. We want you to think intentionally about what databases you'll do your search in. And I say databases intentionally. You should be checking more than one. Databases have different types of information, and so you'll want to use a combination of databases and secondary sources to get everything you need for this competition. Of course, you will have your key search terms that you're going to use that will be dependent upon your research question and which database you're looking through. Those key search terms will then lead to your results, which you may choose to filter. Various filters based on study type, design, age of the publication, authors, and etc. All of that's going to whittle down or expand the number of results you get. And based on those results, we want you to come back to your search terms. This really is an iterative process. Depending on what you find, you may need to rethink your strategy or evolve as you go on. So thinking of that search strategy, and there's different ways you can do this. One of the most common methods of defining a research question is done with the PICO framework, or PCOTS with a TS added to the end. The purpose of the PICO framework at its core is to help you break down the study elements into easily digestible and easy to find outputs. So you have to think about several things when you're defining your research question. You have to think about your population. Is the drug you're looking at for this competition approved in adults and pediatrics? Are you finding only studies that were conducted in adults? Maybe you need to go look more intentionally for those pediatric studies. Is the intervention that you're finding in your literature search aligned with the FDA-approved drug that is the competition product you're supposed to be evaluating? If it is that drug, is it the same dose? Is it being given in the same way? Not to say that you can't look at studies that are, say, dose-finding studies or conducted in other countries where dosing may look different, but that is something you need to keep in mind as you're doing your search to make sure you're capturing all the information you need. You'll want to look at comparators. So you may do a search specifically to see if there were any trials where your drug was compared against an active comparator. Again, you may not find these, but you want to make sure that you are searching and not missing those studies if they do exist. And for the outcome, you'll want to think proactively about what outcomes you would like to see. So what outcomes are important to patients? What outcomes are important to that disease state? Not just what outcomes were conducted in the pivotal trial that led to FDA approval. In terms of timing, this is where you want to consider if the drug you're looking at will be used for a person's lifetime, or if this is more of a short-term sort of treatment. And you'll want to compare that timing that you anticipate use to the timing of the trial or retrospective cohort you might be looking at. And then finally, study types. We'll come back to this at the end, but you want a variety of study types. You do not just want the randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial that everyone includes. You want to make sure you're getting those cohort studies, those retrospective reviews pulled in as well. So once you have your search strategy outlined, you're going to have to pick a database or databases. There are a number of different databases you can be using to find this type of clinical data and research. There's a few listed here on the screen. We weren't trying to tell you which databases to look at, more so just to highlight that there are different types of databases, each with their own niche benefits and available information. So something like Cochrane, for example, is cited by students frequently. This focuses specifically on high quality systematic reviews. Those may or may not be available in the case you're looking at, but if you're looking for systematic reviews, this is a great place to start. When you're doing your primary lit search, of course, you're going to definitely be checking in PubMed. You may also check some of these other smaller specialty databases, pending your access, for different types of data. Now, so in terms of access, some of these databases are available publicly for free. There are several that you should be accessing through your college or university library. So a good place to start for the lit search is to start with your university library website and see what databases or special searches you have access to, and then kind of build your search strategy from there. In addition to the databases, there's a lot of secondary sources for this type of competition and evidence building that you're going to want to check. So things like clinicaltrials.gov to see what other trials are going on with your drug or what other drugs might be in the pipeline to be competition with the competition drug. You'll want to check FDA websites. You may want to check ICER or the Canadian Agency for Drug Technologies and Health to see if either have done a value assessment of your product. You may also want to look at payer and PBM coverage policies. These are publicly available on payer websites and can help you understand the options or what the competition per se is doing. Again, in this competition, you are a health plan and you're recommending drug coverage and requirements. And so getting an idea of what your competitors are doing can be helpful. Now we're going to have a whole section on grading the evidence, but as you are doing your literature search, you want to just do an initial gut check evaluating those sources that you're collecting. Are the information that you're collecting relevant, credible, and accurate? So when I say relevant, I mean, are these journals or websites or government entities located in the same country as you? If they are located outside of the US, is it important for this particular disease state or type of information? It may or may not matter. Sometimes when a drug or a study is very focused on things like lifestyle and habits and diet, it may be more important to have that conducted in the US versus ex-US. But for other types of drugs or studies, maybe they're more genetic based, it may not matter so much. The age of information is an important thing to consider. If something is outdated, it may not be as relevant. And if something was intended for a more lay audience, that may also not be very helpful to you. Credibility is something you'll assess when you're grading the evidence, but you're looking for relevant expertise, conflicts of interest, and then some sort of inherent authority, perhaps when you're talking about like an FDA review. Accuracy, again, you will check as you're doing your evidence grade, but on a higher level, you can check to see if the journal you're pulling from is peer reviewed, if there's any retractions associated with that article, and if things are properly cited, can be initial red flags or green lights. All right, and so I want to first introduce the evidence pyramid that you'll see throughout these 5 modules here, because as you are doing your literature search, one of your goals will be to collect information from each rung of this evidence pyramid. You want to make sure that you're collecting both of that observational, lower quality, expert opinion, case reports, cross-sectional studies, as well as those RCTs, systematic reviews, and meta-analyses that are at the top of this pyramid. You'll have to make sure you have a balance of all of these as you go forward and build your recommendation so that everything is well-rounded and informed. And on that note, as you're doing your literature search, this is an iterative and intentional process. So if you're finding that as you're doing your literature search, all you're finding are randomized control trials, or all you're finding are case series or reports, perhaps you need to rethink your methodology. Do you have gaps in what you have? Are there additional data points you don't have available yet? And how are you going to address those or rethink your strategy to make sure you pull in that information? So with that, I just want to summarize Module 1. So that initial literature search that you're going to be performing is a first step in preparing for the P&T competition. Everything you do afterwards will be based on the results of this lit search. Your methodology should be intentional, both in how it is conducted, so what terms are you using to search, as well as where it is conducted. Which databases do you use? A variety of sources will be needed to compile all the information necessary for this competition. So you'll need primary and secondary and higher and lower quality evidence from that evidence pyramid. And it's important to evaluate your references as you go along. So that initial gut check to make sure you don't have any major gaps. With that, I will stop here for Module 1. Here's a list of resources that are available to you related to the competition, AMCP student membership and resources, as well as the foundation. Thank you.